Om Namo Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtipraya Shavadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtike. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 11, Text 24. Shri Raja Vacha, so after listening to all the glories of Lord Ram and his kingdom, his ruling, Parikshit Maharaj is asking, Katham sa Bhagavan Ramo Bhratrinna va Swayamapmana Tasmin va te anvarvatanta Praja Paurashcha Ishvare. Maharaj Parikshit inquired from Shukdev Goswami, how did the Lord conduct himself? How did he behave in relationship with his brothers, who were expansions of his own self? And how did his brothers and the inhabitants of Ayodhya treat him? Shri Vadrayane Ruvacha Atha Dishad Digvijaye Bhratri Bhuneshwara Atmanam Darshayan Swanam Purim Mekshat Sanuga. Shukdev Goswami replied, after accepting the throne of the government by the fervent request of his younger brother Bharat, Lord Ramchandra ordered his younger brothers to go out and conquer the entire world, while he personally remained in the capital to give audience to all the citizens and residents of the palace and supervise the governmental affairs with other assistants. The Supreme Personality of Godhead does not allow any of his devotees or assistants to be engaged in sense gratification. The younger brothers of Lord Ramchandra were at home enjoying the personal presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the Lord ordered them to go out and achieve victory all over the world. It was a custom, and this custom in some places is still current, that all other kings would have to accept the supremacy of the emperor. If the king of a small state did not accept the emperor's supremacy, there would be fight, and the king of the small state would be obliged to accept the emperor as supreme. Otherwise, it would not be possible for the emperor to rule the country. So there's a difference between emperor and kings. So emperor means the master of many other kings, and the other smaller kingdoms, they have to accept the supremacy of the emperor, and then they would just give him taxes and survive under him. Lord Ramchandra showed his favor to his brothers by ordering them to go out. Many of the Lord's devotees residing in Vrindavan have taken the vow not to leave Vrindavan to preach Krishna consciousness. But the Lord says that Krishna consciousness should be spread all over the world, in every village and every town. This is the open order of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prithvi che ache yad nagar adigram sarvatra prachar highway morana. A pure devotee therefore must execute the order of the Lord and must not gratify his senses by remaining stagnant in one place, falsely proud, thinking that because he does not leave Vrindavan but chants in a solitary place, he has become a great devotee. A devotee must carry out the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Yara deka tarakaha Krishna upadesh. Every devotee, therefore, should spread Krishna consciousness by preaching, asking whomever he meets to accept the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord says, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. This is the order of the Lord, who speaks as the Supreme Emperor. Everyone should be induced to accept this order, for this is victory, Digvijay. And it's a duty of the soldier, the devotee, to impress upon everyone this philosophy of life. So Prabhupada is connecting Lord Ramchandra's order to his brothers to go out and conquer the whole world. So his is comparing that to Prabhupada or or acharyas sending their disciples to go out and preach. And he clearly says that it's not a duty of a devotee to sit in Vrindavan, chant in a solitary place, and thinking that he has become a great devotee. So Prabhupada says, because it's the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Yar Dekha Tarakah Krishna Updesh, that everybody should go and try to preach. Spread Krishna consciousness. Give it to everybody that we meet. And then the Lord will be pleased. Then Prabhupada will be pleased. And that's the perfection of life, actually. Of course, those who are Kanishta Adhikaris do not preach, but the Lord shows mercy to them also, as he did by staying personally in Ayodhya to give audience to the people in general. One should not mistakenly think that the Lord asked his younger brothers to leave Ayodhya because he especially favored the citizens. The Lord is merciful to everyone, and he knows how to show his favor to each individual person according to his capacity. One who abides by the order of the Lord is a pure devotee. So this is a definition of pure devotee. One who abides by the order of the Lord. Of course, every person is different and everybody gets different level of order or different level of instructions, and they can make progress accordingly. Asikta margam gandhodaya karinam madashikara swaminam praptam alokya mattam va sutaram ivam. During the reign of Lord Ramachandra, the streets of the capital Ayodhya were sprinkled with perfumed water and drops of perfumed liquor, thrown about by elephants from their trunks. When the citizens saw the Lord personally supervising the affairs of the city in such opulence, they appreciated this opulence very much. So this was how opulent the city of Ayodhya was. We have simply heard about the opulence of Ramaraja during the reign of Lord Ramchandra. Now here is one example of the opulence of the Lord's kingdom. The streets of Ayodhya were not only clean, but also sprinkled with perfumed water and drops of perfumed liquor, which were distributed by elephants through their trunks. There was no need of sprinkling machines, for the elephant has a natural ability to suck water through its trunk and again throw it out in a shower. We can understand the opulence of the city from this one example. It was actually sprinkled with perfumed water, the whole city, not just one street, whole city. Moreover, the citizens had the opportunity to see the Lord personally supervising the affairs of the state. He was not a sleeping monarch, as we can understand from his activities in sending his brothers to see to affairs outside the capital and punish anyone who did not obey the emperor's orders. This was called Digvijay. The citizens were all given facilities for peaceful life, and they were also qualified with appropriate attributes according to Varnashram. As we have seen from the previous chapter, Varnashram Gunanvita. The citizens were trained according to Varnashram system. A class of men were Brahmins, a class of men were Kshatriyas, a class of Vaishyas, and the other class were Shudras. Without this scientific division, there can be no question of good citizenship. The king, being magnanimous and perfect in his duty, performed many sacrifices and treated the citizens as his sons. And the citizens, being trained in the Varnashram system, were obedient and perfectly ordered. The entire monarchy was so opulent and peaceful that the government was even able to sprinkle the streets with perfumed water, what to speak of other management. Since the city was sprinkled with perfumed water, we can simply imagine how opulent it was in other respects. Why should the citizens not have felt happy during the reign of Lord Ramchandra? So every kind of opulence was there and everybody was looked after. Varnashram system was established, and the king, or Lord Ram, he would be personally supervising the affairs of the state. So that is why Ram Rajya is so famous and everybody talks about it. And because Lord Ram, and as Prabhupada said, he was not a sleeping monarch. And he sent out his brothers also to conquer the rest of the world, to bring everybody. The idea was not just to increase the boundaries. Idea was that this kind of kingdom or this kind of ruling should be all over the world. And that was the whole idea. Text 27. The palaces, the palace gates, the assembly houses, the platforms of meeting places, the temples, and all such places were decorated with golden water pots and bedecked with various types of flags. So we can, from here, we can just imagine that how opulent this city of Ayodhya must be. It had palaces, not just one palace, palaces. Palace gates, huge gates, assembly houses were there, platforms of meeting places. There were temples. And obviously there must be other places also. Wherever Lord Ramchandra visited, auspicious welcome gates were constructed with banana trees and betelnut trees, full of flowers and fruits. The gates were decorated with various flags made of colorful cloth and with tapestries, mirrors, and garments. So completely refutes Darwin's theory that only 10,000 years ago we have this civilized men, otherwise they were all uncivilized men roaming around with their spears and half naked and killing animals. No, look at Lord Ram's kingdom. Wherever Lord Ramchandra visited, the people approached him with paraphernalia of worship and begged the Lord's blessings. O Lord, they said, as you rescued the earth from the bottom of the sea in your incarnation as a board, may you now maintain it. Thus we beg your blessings. Thereafter, not having seen the Lord for a long time, the citizens, both men and women, being very eager to see him, left their homes and got up on the roofs of the palaces. So they were palaces. And the men and women, they got on the roofs of those palaces to see the Lord. Being incompletely satiated with seeing the face of the lotus-eyed Lord Ramchandra, they showered flowers upon him from the roofs of the palaces. Thereafter, Lord Ramchandra entered the palace of his forefathers. Within the palace were various treasures and valuable wardrobes. The sitting places on the two sides of the entrance door were made of coral. The yards were surrounded by pillars of vedure money. The floor was made of highly polished market money, and the foundation was made of marble. We cannot even imagine the opulence. The entire palace was decorated with flags and garlands and bedecked with valuable stones, shining with the celestial effulgence. Palace was fully decorated with pearls and surrounded by lamps and incense. The men and women within the palace all resembled demigods and were decorated with various ornaments, which seemed beautiful because of being placed on their bodies. So there was no poverty anywhere. Lord Ramchandra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, chief of the best learned scholars, resided in that palace with his pleasure potency, Mother Sita, and enjoyed complete peace. Without transgressing the religious principles, Lord Ramchandra, whose lotus feet are worshipped by devotees in meditation, enjoyed with all the paraphernalia of transcendental pleasure for as long as needed. So this was how great his kingdom was. So thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 9th canto, 11th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Ramchandra Rules the World. So it starts chapter 12, entitled Dynasty of Kusha, the son of Lord Ramchandra. Text 1. So there are hardly any purport, so we'll just go to the translation. Shukdev Goswami said, the son of Lord Ramchandra was Kusha, The son of Kusha was Atiti. The son of Atiti was Nishad, and the son of Nishad was Nab. The son of Nab was Pundarik, and from Pundarik came a son named Kshemadhanva. The son of Kshemadhanva was Devanik, and Devanik's son was Aniha. Aniha's son was Pariyatra, and Pariyatra's son was Balasthala. The son of Balasthala was Vajranav, who was said to have been born from the effulgence of the sun god. The son of Vajranav was Sagan, and his son was Vidhriti. The son of Vidhriti was Hiranyanab, who became a disciple of Jaimini and became a great acharya of mystic yoga. It's from Hiranyanab that the great saint Yajnavalkya learned the highly elevated system of mystic yoga, known as Adhyatma Yoga, which can loosen the knots of material attachment in the heart. The son of Hiranyanab was Pushpa, and the son of Pushpa was Dhruva Sandhi. The son of Dhruva Sandhi was Sudarshan, whose son was Agnivarn, and the son of Agnivarn was named Shigra, and his son was Maru. Text 6. So asavaste yog siddha kalapa mastita kalerante suryavansham nashtam bhavita puna. Having achieved perfection in the power of mystic yoga, Maru still lives in a place known as Kalapagram. At the end of Kali Yuga, he will revive the lost Surya dynasty by begetting a son. So I don't know where the Kalapagram is. So Maru is still living. At least 5,000 years ago, Srila Shukdev Goswami ascertained the existence of Maru in Kalapagram and said that Maru, having achieved a Yog Siddha body, would continue to exist until the end of Kali Yuga, which is calculated to continue for 432,000 years. So that's it. It's really a Yog Siddha body. Such is the perfection of mystic power. By controlling the breath, the perfect yogi can continue his life for as long as he likes. Sometimes we hear from the Vedic literature that some personalities from the Vedic age, such as Vyasadeva and Ashwatthama, are still living. Here we understand that Maru is also still living. We are sometimes surprised that a mortal body can live for such a long time. The explanation of this longevity is given here by the word Yoga Siddha. If one becomes perfect in the practice of yoga, he can live as long as he likes. The demonstration of some trifling yoga siddha does not constitute perfection. Here is a factual example of perfection. A yoga siddha can live as long as he likes. Text 7. From Maru was born a son named Prashushruta, and from Prashushruta came Sandhi, from Sandhi came Amarshan, and from Amarshan a son named Mahaswan. From Mahaswan, Vishwabahu took his birth. From Vishwabahu came a son named Prasenajit. From Prasenajit came Takshak, and from Takshak came Brihadbala, who was killed in a fight by your father. Means Parikshit Maharaja's father, Abhimanyu, killed Brihadbala. All these kings in the dynasty of Ikshvaku have passed away. Now please listen as I describe the kings who will be born in the future. From Brihadbala will come Brihadarana. The son of Brihadarana will be Urukriya, who will have a son named Vatsvaridha. From Vatsvaridha will have a son named Prativyom, and Prativyom will have a son named Bhanu, from whom Divak, a great commander of soldiers, will take birth. Thereafter from Divak will come a son named Sahadeva, and from Sahadeva a great hero named Brihadashva. From Brihadashva will come Bhanuman, and from Bhanuman will come Pratikashva. Son of Pratikashva will be Supratika. So everything is mentioned in Bhagavatam, what's going to happen in the future also. Thereafter from Supratika will come Marudev, from Marudev Sunakshatra, from Sunakshatra Pushkar, and from Pushkar Antariksh. Son of Antariksh will be Sutapa, and his son will be Amitrajit. From Amitrajit will come a son named Brihadraj, and from Brihadraj will come Barhi, from Barhi will come Kritanjaya. Son of Kritanjaya will be known as Rananjaya, and from him will come a son known as Sanjaya. From Sanjaya will come Shakya, from Shakya will come Sudoda, and from Sudoda will come Langal. From Langal will come Prasenajit, and from Prasenajit, Kshudrak. From Shudrak will come Ranak, from Ranak will come Surat, and from Surat will come Sumitra, ending the dynasty. This is the description of the dynasty of Brihadbala. So Sumitra, no more dynasty. The last king in the dynasty of Ikshvaku will be Sumitra. After Sumitra, there will be no more sons in the dynasty of the sun god. And thus the dynasty will end. But this dynasty will be started again at the end of Kali Yuga by Mura. So thus ends 9th canto, 12th chapter, Bhaktivedanta Purports, entitled Dynasty of Kusha, son of Lord Ramchandra. Chapter 13, the Dynasty of Maharaja Nimi. So again, not many purports are there, so we'll just go to the translation. Srila Shukdev Goswami said, after beginning sacrifices, Maharaj Nimi, the son of Ikshvaku, requested the great sage Vasishtha to take the post of chief priest. At that time, Vasishtha replied, my dear Maharaj Nimi, I have already accepted the same post in a sacrifice begun by Lord Indra. So there was some issue here. Let's see. I shall return here after finishing the yajna for Indra. Kindly wait for me until then. Maharaj Nimi remained silent, and Vasishtha began to perform the sacrifice for Lord Indra. Nimishalam idam vidvan satram mara bhatatmavam ritvig bhir paras tavan nagamad yavata guruhu. Maharaj Nimi, being a self-realized soul, considered that this life is flickering. Therefore, instead of waiting long for Vasishtha, he began performing the sacrifice with other priests. The Chanakya Pandit says, Shariram kshana vidinvansi kalpanta sthaino guna. The duration of one's life in the material world may end at any moment. But if within this life one does something worthy, that qualification is depicted in history eternally. Here is a great personality, Maharaj Nimi, who knew this fact. In the human form of life, one should perform activities in such a way that at the end he goes back home, back to Godhead. This is self-realization. So this also we have to understand. Duration of one's life can end at any moment. So within this life, we have to take up seriously devotional service. After completing the sacrificial performance of King Indra, the spiritual master Vasishtha returned and found that his disciple Maharaj Nimi had disobeyed his instructions. Thus Vasishtha cursed him, saying, may the material body of Nimi, who considers himself learned, immediately fall. Nimi prati dado shapam gurve adharma vartine tavapi patata dadeho loba dharma majanata. For unnecessarily cursing him when he had committed no offense, Maharaj Nimi counteracted his spiritual master. For the sake of getting contributions from the King of Heaven, he said, you have lost your religious intelligence. Therefore, I pronounce this curse. Your body also will fall. So, cursing, counter-cursing going on. The religious principle for a Brahman is that he should not be greedy at all. In this case, however, for the sake of more lucrative remunerations from the King of Heaven, Vasishtha neglected Maharaj Nimi's request on this planet. And when Nimi performed the sacrifices with other priests, Vasishtha unnecessarily cursed him. When one is influenced by contaminated activities, his power, material or spiritual, reduces. Although Vasishtha was the spiritual master of Maharaj Nimi, because of his greed, he became fallen. So it can happen with anybody. Iti utsasarja swamdeham nimiradhyatma kovida mitra varuna yor jagye urvashyam prapitamaha. After saying this, Maharaj Nimi, who was expert in the science of spiritual knowledge, gave up his body. Vasishtha, the great grandfather, gave up his body also, but through the semen discharged by Mitra and Varuna. When they saw Urvashi, he was born again. So Mitra and Varuna chanced to meet Urvashi, the most beautiful prostitute of the heavenly kingdom, and they became lusty. Because they were great saints, they tried to control their lust, but they could not do so, and thus they discharged semen. This semen was kept carefully in a water pot, and Vasishtha was born from it. So many wonderful things go on in the world. During the performance of the yajna, the body relinquished by Maharaj Nimi was preserved in fragrant substances. And at the end of Satyuga, the great saints and Brahmins made the following request to all the demigods assembled there. Ragyo jivatu dehoayam prasanna prabhavo yadi tatheti ukte nimi praha ma bhunme dehe bandhanum. If you are satisfied with this sacrifice, and if you are actually able to do so, kindly bring Maharaj Nimi back to life in this body. The demigod said yes to this request by the sages, but Maharaj Nimi said, please do not imprison me again in a material body. So the soul of Maharaj Nimi said, please, I don't want to get a material body. The demigods are in a position many times higher than that of human beings. Therefore, although the great saints and sages were also powerful Brahmins, they requested the demigods to revive Maharaj Nimi's body, which had been preserved in various perfumed balms. One should not think that the demigods are powerful only in enjoying the senses. They are also powerful in such deeds as bringing life back to a dead body. There are many similar instances in the Vedic literature. For example, according to history of Savitri and Satyavan, Satyavan died and was being taken away by Yamaraj. But on the request of his wife, Savitri, Satyavan was revived in the same body. This is an important fact about the power of the demigods. Very, very powerful beings. Yasi yogam na vanchanti viyogabhe katara bhajanti charanam bhojam munyo harimedhasa. Maharaj Nimi continued, Mayavadis generally want freedom from accepting a material body because they fear having to give it up again. But devotees whose intelligence is always filled with the service of the Lord are unafraid. Indeed, they take advantage of the body to render transcendental, loving service. Maharaj Nimi did not want to accept a material body, which would be cause of bondage, but because he was a devotee, he wanted a body by which he could render devotional service to the Lord. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Janmavi mora ichha yadi tora, bhakta grihe jani janma hava mora. My Lord, if you want me to take birth and accept a material body again, kindly do me this favor. Allow me to take birth in the home of a servant, your devotee. I do not mind being born there, even as an insignificant creature like an insect. So he says, Kita janma havyata toyadas. If you want to give me a material body again, just give me birth in the house of a devotee. Mahaprabhu also said, Na dhanam na janam na sundari. O Lord of the universe, I do not desire material birth. Materialistic followers, a beautiful wife of fruitive activities, described in flowery language. All I want, life after life, is unmotivated devotional service to you. By saying life after life, the Lord referred not to an ordinary birth, but a birth in which to remember the lotus feet of the Lord. Such a body is desirable. A devotee does not think like yogis and jnanis, who want to refuse a material body and become one with the impersonal Brahman effulgence. A devotee does not like this idea. On the contrary, he will accept any body, material or spiritual, for he wants to serve the Lord. This is real liberation. So it's not that devotees don't want bodies, they just don't want any body. They just want to have a body with which he can serve the Lord. If one has a strong desire to serve the Lord, even if he accepts a material body, there is no cause of anxiety. Since a devotee, even in a material body, is a liberated soul. This is confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami. A person acting in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, in the service of Krishna, with his body, mind, and intelligence and words, is a liberated person, even within this material world, although he may be engaged in many so-called material activities. The desire to serve the Lord establishes one as liberated in any condition of life, whether in a spiritual body or a material. In a spiritual body, the devotee becomes a direct associate of the Lord. But even though a devotee may superficially appear to be in the material body, he is always liberated and is engaged in the same duties of service to the Lord as a devotee in Vaikuntha Loka. There is no distinction. So if somebody is serving the Lord here, it's the same as serving the Lord in Vaikuntha Loka. The Lord is not different, service is not different, and the person who's rendering service, that's also same. There is no distinction, it is said. Sadhur jivava madhava. When a devotee is alive or dead, his only concern is to serve the Lord. When he gives up his body, he goes directly to become an associate of the Lord and serve him. Although he does the same thing even in a material body in the material world. Only difference is in this material body we have a chance to commit offenses because of our envy in our heart. But in the spiritual world, nobody is envious of anybody. So they just want to serve. For a devotee, there is no pain, pleasure, or material perfection. One may argue that at the time of death, the devotee also suffers because of giving up his material body. But in this connection, the example may be given that a cat carries a mouse in its mouth and also carries a kitten in its mouth. Both the mouse and the kitten are carried in the same mouth, but the perception of the mouse is different from that of the kitten. When a devotee gives up his body, tyaktva deham, he is ready to go back home, back to God. Thus his perception is certainly different from that of a person being taken away by Yamaraj for punishment. A person whose intelligence is always concentrated upon the service of the Lord is unafraid of accepting a material body, whereas a non-devotee, having no engagement in the service of the Lord, is very much afraid of accepting a material body or giving up his present one. Therefore, we should follow the instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvara. It doesn't matter whether we accept a material body or a spiritual body. Our only ambition should be to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we all have to leave our bodies, that's for sure. That's Jatasya Dhruvo Mrityu. One who has taken birth, definitely is going to die. But here the difference is there. When a devotee leaves the body, he is ready to go back home, back to Godhead. So he's not afraid of leaving the body. When a materialistic person leaves the body, he's afraid because, first of all, he has attachment to the material possessions, his family members. So he doesn't want to leave the body. And then secondly, he doesn't know where he would be going. And if he's really sinful, as we studied during Ajamil's story, Yamdutas will come to take him, and they are definitely not very good looking. Ferocious, they have animal dogs with them. They bind up the soul and take him away. That's very, very painful. But for a devotee, obviously it's not the Yamdutas who are going to come, it's only Vishnu Dutas will come. Or maybe other devotees can come. Who knows what Krishna will arrange or what Prabhupada will arrange. So he has no problem in leaving the world. He will be very, very happy to leave the body and then take up another body to be engaged in the service of Krishna again. Simple as that. Deham navarurutseyaham dukkha shoka bhayavaham sarvatrasya yato mrityur matsyanam udake yatham. I do not wish to accept a material body, for such a body is the source of all distress, lamentation, and fear. Everywhere in the universe, just as it is for a fish in the water, which lives always in anxiety because of fear of death. The material body, whether in higher or lower planetary system, is destined to die. The lower planetary system or species of life, one may die soon. And in the higher planets or higher species, one may live for a long time, but death is inevitable. This fact should be understood. Human form of life, one should take the opportunity to put an end to birth, death, old age, and disease by performing tapasya. This is the aim of human civilization, to stop the repetition of birth and death, which is called mrityu sansara vartvani. This can be done only when one is Krishna conscious or has achieved the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. Otherwise, one must rot in this material world and accept a material body subject to birth, death, old age, and disease. So Prabhupada says, in the human form of life, one should take the opportunity to put an end to birth, death, old age, and disease by performing tapasya. Rishabdev also said, Tapo Divyam Putrika Yena Sattva. One has to perform tapasya. This human body is not meant for, it's not provided for such so-called enjoyment of the material world. Generally, people say the aim of life is khao, pio, jio, eat, drink, and be merry. No. It's a life for tapasya. Tapasya means voluntarily going through some, I don't say distress, but some kind of engagements to achieve something higher. And we all do tapasya. It's not that we don't do tapasya. Students do tapasya by studying and appearing in the exam so they can get a better grades and better admission and better jobs later on, so that they can enjoy. If somebody says, no, I'm not going to sit and study, so his level of enjoyment will not be the same. Of course, these days, those who don't study and they become the cricket stars or the movie stars and then they make more money. But again, there's a huge difference. But even as a cricket star, one has to work very, very hard, first to come to the team and to stay in the team. And a movie star also, they have to work very hard. This is tapasya. It's not easy money. So everybody is doing tapasya, but the real tapasya is not how I can enjoy better in this material world. Real tapasya is to how to get out of this cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. Because material world means problems. And Prabhupada said, otherwise one must rot in this material world. The example given here is that water is a very nice place for a fish, but the fish is never free from anxiety about death, since big fish are always eager to eat the small fish. And not just big fish eating the small fish. Now, human beings are doing fishing. They go out with their fishing rod and try to catch this fish from the ocean or from rivers and eat them. All living entities are eaten by bigger living entities. This is the way of material nature. Ahastani sahastana, apadani chatushpada. Those who are devoid of hands are prey for those who have hands. Those devoid of legs are prey for the four-legged. The weak are the subsistence of the strong, and the general rule holds that one living being is food for another. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has created the material world in such a way that one living entity is food for another. Thus, there is a struggle for existence. But although we speak of survival of the fittest, no one can escape death without becoming a devotee of the Lord. Harimina nevas ritim taranti. One cannot escape the cycle of birth and death without becoming a devotee. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Aprapya mam nivartante. One who does not attain shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna must certainly wander up and down within the cycle of birth and death. So this is what Maharaj Nimi wanted. He wanted a body with which he can serve Krishna. Devya uchu videhe ushyatam kamam lochaneshu sharirinam unmeshan nimeshabhyam lakshito adhyatma sansita. The demigod said, let Maharaj Nimi live without a material body. Let him live in a spiritual body as a personal associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And according to his desire, let him be manifest or unmanifest to common materially embodied people. The demigods wanted Maharaj Nimi to come to life, but Maharaj Nimi did not want to accept another material body. Under the circumstances, the demigods, having been requested by the saintly persons, gave him the benediction that he would be able to stay in his spiritual body. Now, there are two kinds of spiritual bodies are generally understood by common men. The term spiritual body is sometimes taken to refer to a ghostly body. An impious man who dies after sinful activities is sometimes condemned so that he cannot possess a gross material body of 5 material elements, but must live in a subtle body of mind, intelligence, and ego. However, as explained in Bhagavad Gita, devotees can give up the material body and attain a spiritual body, free from all material tinges, gross and subtle. Thus the demigods gave King Nimi the benediction that he would be able to stay in a purely spiritual body, free from all gross and subtle material contamination. So his spiritual body was not this subtle body. It is completely spiritual. The Supreme Personality of Godhead can be seen or unseen according to his own transcendental desire. Similarly, a devotee being Jivan Mukta can be seen or not, as he chooses. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Naham Prakasha Sarvasya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is not manifest to everyone and anyone. To the common man, he is unseen. Ata Shri Krishna Namati. Krishna and his name, fame, qualities, and paraphernalia cannot be materially understood. Unless one is advanced in spiritual life, one cannot see Krishna. Therefore, the ability to see Krishna depends on Krishna's mercy. The same privilege of being seen or unseen according to one's own desire was given to Maharaj Nimi. Thus, he lived in his original spiritual body as an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Arajak bhayam nrinam manyamana maharshaya deham amantu sma nime kumara samajayata. Thereafter, to save the people from the danger of an unregulated government, the sages churned Maharaj Nimi's material body, from which, as a result, a son was born. Arajak bhayam. If the government is unsteady and unregulated, there is a danger of fear for the people. At the present moment, this danger always exists because of government by the people. Here we can see that the great sages got a son from Nimi's material body to guide the citizens properly. For such a guidance is a duty of a Kshatriya king. A Kshatriya is one who saves the citizens from being injured. In the so-called people's government, there is no trained Kshatriya king. As soon as someone strong accumulates votes, he becomes a minister or president without training from the learned Brahmins expert in the Shastras. Indeed, we see that in some countries the government changes from party to party And therefore, the men in charge of the government are more eager to protect the position than to see that the citizens are happy. The Vedic civilization prefers monarchy. People like the government of Lord Ramchandra, the government of Maharaja Yudhishthira, and the governments of Maharaj Parikshit, Maharaj Ambarish, Maharaj Prahlad. There are many instances of excellent government under a monarch. Gradually, the democratic government is becoming unfit for the needs of the people. And therefore, some parties are trying to elect a dictator. A dictatorship is same as a monarchy, but without a trained leader. Actually, people will be happy when a trained leader, whether a monarch or a dictator, takes control of the government and rules the people according to the standard regulations of the authorized scriptures. So the king should know the scriptures, should follow the scriptures, or the Brahman should be there to guide him in his execution of administration. So that was the reason, even though Maharaj Nimi was killed by the curse of Vasishtha, the sages gave Nimi, the demigods gave Nimi a spiritual body, for then the sages churned Maharaj Nimi's material body and his son was born. The same way Maharaj Prithu was born. Because he was born in an unusual way, the son was called Janak. And because he was born from the dead body of his father, he was known as Vadeha. Means without Deha. His father was without any Deha. Because he was born from the churning of his father's material body, he was known as Mithil. And because he constructed a city as King Mithil, the city was called Mithila. This is Janak Maharaj, father of Sita Devi. O King Parikshit, from Mithil came a son named Udavasu, and from Udavasu, Nandivardhan, from Nandivardhan, Suketu, and from Suketu, Devrat. From Devrat came a son named Brihadrat, and from Brihadrat, a son named Mahavirya, who became the father of Sudhriti. The son of Sudhriti was known as Dhrishtaketu, and from Dhrishtaketu came Haryashva. From Haryashva came a son named Maru. The son of Maru was Pratipak, and the son of Pratipak was Kritarat. From Kritarat came Devamida. From Devamida, Vishruta, and from Vishruta, Mahadhriti. From Mahadhriti was born a son named Kritirat. From Kritirat was born Maharoma. From Maharoma came a son named Swarnaroma, and from Swarnaroma, Rishwaroma. From Rishwaroma came a son named Shiradhwaja, who also called Janak. When Shiradhwaja was this is Janak, this is the other, the real Janak, not the first Janak. When Shiradhwaja was plowing a field, from the front of his plow, Sira, appeared a daughter named Sita Devi, who later became the wife of Lord Ramchandra. Thus, he was known as Shiradhwaja. The son of Shiradhwaja was Kushadhwaja, and the son of Kushadhwaja was King Dharmadhwaja, who had two sons named Kritadhwaj and Mitdhwaj. O Maharaj Parikshit, the son of Kritadhwaj was Keshidhwaj, and the son of Mitadhwaj was Khandikya. The son of Kritadhwaj was expert in spiritual knowledge, and the son of Mitadhwaj was expert in Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Khandikya fled in fear of Keshidhwaj. The son of Keshidhwaj was Hanuman, and the son of Hanuman was Shatadimna. Son of Shatadimna was named Shuchi. From Shuchi, Shandavaja was born, and from Shandavad came a son named Urjaketu. The son of Urjaketu was Aja, and the son of Aja was Purajit. The son of Purajit was Arishtanemi, and his son was Shrutayu. Shrutayu begot a son named Suparshvak, and Suparshvak begot Chitrarat. Son of Chitrarat was Kshemadhi, and who became the king of Mithila. Son of Kshemadhi was Samarat, and his son was Satyarat. Son of Satyarat was Upaguru, and the son of Upaguru was Upagupta, a partial expansion of the fire god. Son of Upagupt was Vasvananta. The son of Vasvananta was Yuyudha. The son of Yuyudha was Subhashan, and the son of Subhashan was Shruta. The son of Shrut was Jaya, from whom there came Vijay. The son of Vijay was Rita. Son of Rita was Shunak, and the son of Shunak was Vitahavya. The son of Vitahavya was Dhriti. The son of Dhriti was Bahulashva. The son of Bahulash was Kriti, and his son was Mahavashi. Wow, so many descendants and dynasties are given. Eteva Maithila Rajan Atma Vidya Visharada Yogeshwar Prasadena Dvandvar Mukta Griheshwapi. Shukdev Goswami continued. My dear King Parikshit, all the kings of the dynasty of Mithil were completely in knowledge of their spiritual identity. Therefore, even though staying at home, they were liberated from the duality of material existence. This material world is called the Dvaita, or duality. The word of duality, that is to say, in the material world, so-called goodness and badness are both the same. Therefore, in this world, to distinguish between good and bad, happiness and distress is meaningless because they're both mental concoctions, manodharma. Because everything here is miserable and troublesome, to create an artificial situation and pretend it to be full of happiness is simply illusion. So everything is full of misery, whether we call it goodness or whether we call it miserable situation. And the so-called goodness is also misery. Because it's all, first of all, relative, and then ultimately it leads to only misery. That's all. Means, even if somebody is in the mode of goodness and he is working very piously, but he's still going to take birth in the material world. He's not out of it. So ultimately it's misery. The liberated person, being above the influence of the three modes of material nature, is unaffected by such dualities in all circumstances. He remains Krishna conscious by tolerating so-called happiness and distress. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Matra Sparshasthu Kunti, O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception only. Oceana Bharat, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Those who are liberated, being on the transcendental platform of rendering service to the Lord, do not care about so-called happiness and distress. They know that these are like changing seasons, which are perceivable by contact with the material body. Happiness and distress come and go. Therefore, a Pandit, a learned man, is not concerned with them. As it is said, Gatasuna Gatasunchana Shochanti Pandita. The body is dead from the very beginning because it's a lump of matter. It has no feelings of happiness and distress. Because the soul within the body is in the bodily concept of life, it suffers happiness and distress, but these come and go. So one has to learn to tolerate. It's understood herewith that the kings born in the dynasty of Mithil were all liberated persons, unaffected by the so-called happiness and distress of this world. So thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of 9th canto, 13th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Dynasty of Maharaja Nimi. So we'll stop here, and the next chapter, beautiful chapter, King Pururava, enchanted by Urvashi. Tomorrow there won't be any class because I'm traveling back to my home. So we'll have the class day after tomorrow. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, please accept mine.
Very nice class, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Prabhuji, I have a question. So, what practical application in bhakti, spirituality, can help us to overcome from the fear of death.
We have the best practice, chant.
I can't
See,
see.
if we are when we are chanting, then as it is explained, Radha and Krishna are here on our tongue. They're dancing on our tongue. And if we come to that realization, then obviously, even if we're going to die, Yamraj is not going to come, Yamdutas are not going to come because Radha and Krishna are there. They cannot come in front of Radha and Krishna. And if we do personal services to the deities, or if we get attached to the deities, then even if death comes, first of all, it is said the untimely death will not happen. And whenever the death comes, a person who's thinking of Radha and Krishna or his deities, then even the thought of deities is same as having the deities or the Lord in front of you. So the person cannot be afraid of death. So for him, death is just changing the bodies, or just like we change clothes. Big deal.
Yes, but practically, if I notice, I don't see any improvement in myself in terms of this, because there are some attachment which are really very minor, and then there are some attachment which are very, very strong, Prabhuji. So especially attachment for your own body and for the near and dear ones. So this I feel like I don't know whether this lifetime will be enough to really overcome from this fear, because even after chanting, probably I have to improve my chanting more, or I have to be more focused and conscious. And that's why I'm not seeing any improvement. Otherwise, every time I see to myself, I don't see any improvement actually. It's a very strong attachment. So that is what I thought to check with you.
See, attachment for the near and dear ones, they will remain because we don't become stones or emotionless or heartless once one takes up devotion service. That's not going to happen. Only thing is our attachment to them will be on a spiritual level. That will happen. Chanting is the process. Cheto Darpan Marjanam will happen by this Param Vijayata Shri Krishna Sankirtana. That is definitely is going to happen.
Yes, Prabhuji, you're right. Because when I heard about today's lecture about the yogi, out of 4 classes of men, yogis are considered from the second highest category. Even after like they are irrespective of doing highest sadhana, penances, austerity, they're still endeavoring to expand their lifespan using their yogic power. That means they also have the attachment for the body, not they're using this mystic power to increase their level of bhakti. So if that's what their level is such that my level is nowhere closer to that, so how can I think about that compared to them? I mean, if they are not been able to help themselves, and my position, I'm just like wondering.
So obviously we are not hatha yogis. So we are we are trying to be bhakti yogis. So that's what we are. I mean, just like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna asked him what happens to the yogi who does not achieve perfection. So Krishna says, well, if he dies with little advancement, then he takes birth in a wealthy family or in a known family, or he becomes intelligent or beautiful or whatever, wealthy. And if he dies after making better progress, higher progress, then he takes birth in a devotee family, where he starts from the very beginning. So there is no loss in this process.
Yes.
It might be true that it might take few births, which is fine, but at least the progress is assured, and the end result we know, whether in this lifetime or next lifetime, the end result we know. By mercy of Krishna, we'll go come back to Godhead. So the fear should not be there, fear of death, or fear of any kind.
I wish if there should be any button, if I click that button, it like immediately I can get rid of my fear, but there's no such shortcuts actually. So
Prabhupada has already given us shortcut. There cannot be more shortcuts. Bhakti
yes,
Siddhanta Maharaj says, one who does not chant 64 rounds every day, he's fallen, he's patit. Prabhupada said, okay, 16 rounds, that's still good enough. That's pretty much a shortcut.
yes, Prabhuji. So like as long as I can see that there is fear in me, that means I truly do not have love for myself or anyone. That is called lust, right, Prabhuji? And now I need to transform that lust to spiritual love. And when it will happen, then there won't be, as you said, that fear. So as long as I have fear, that means it's not pure love also then.
Well, see, Maharaj Nimi also had fear. I don't want to take a material body. He was a spiritually very advanced person. If he can curse Vashishta Muni and the curse worked, means he is very spiritually advanced. So fear is there, but at the same time, when we have taken up the process, we have faith in Prabhupada, we have faith in Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Slowly it will all go away. It's okay. And many times, because of fear, we become attentive. Otherwise, we become complacent or lazy.
Correct. Yes, Prabhuji.
So that's also not good.
Yes, thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mata.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So thank you all very much. You all have a wonderful and safe, happy New Year. And I'll see you day after tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna,
Thank
Jai
you very
Krishna,
much.
Jai